Okay, we're live this end.
I'm clicking go live on my end. And then, yes, we are alive with you together now. Welcome back to Patriotic Art Live.
We're live this end.
I'm very happy to be together again with you, Patriot. How are you doing? Go live on my end.
I'm very well, thanks. Just a slight technical glitch.
Yes, we are alive with you together now. Welcome back to Patriotic. That happens.
Sorry. Bear with me.
Very happy to be together again with you, Patriot. How are you doing? Go live on my end. Are you still live?
Reverb from somewhere.
Oh, yes, we are. Well, I will with you together now. Adding some reverb. What are we, in a rock band now? What's going on? That happens. The rock duo.
It's being played double somewhere.
Oh, no. Mine was on. Are you still live? I just turned it off. Yes, so that echo. Well, yeah, that echo. I think some reverb. What are we, in a rock band now? What's going on? That happens. The rock duo. I don't believe it's very happy from my end. Turned off. Oh, no. My laptop. Anyway, let me talk to the audience a bit about what we're doing here. Patriarch has been posting polls every week to the community, the white positive community in the UK and USA, etc., asking what themes would you like us to do live art on. And so this poll was a variety of famous kings in our past, King Arthur, etc. And Alexander the Great was the one who won the poll, I believe. So that is the theme for today. And my approach to the artwork that I'll be doing is whenever if you'd say Google Alexander the Great, there's one iconic representation of him that appears to be from a fresco, probably, maybe 2,000-year-old fresco. I don't know, quite old. It's all kind of broken up and, has that archaic look to it. The art style itself is even more Gothic, I would say, in the sense that it's more flat. It's not the kind of art style that you would see, say, from the Renaissance, where everything is very realistic. And it's him riding his horse into battle, Alexander the Great. He doesn't have a helmet on, which is unique, because a lot of times they'll show these great historic figures in full regalia, and it's kind of more like a kind of an honorary piece, whereas this portrays him more as a warrior in the thrill of battle, if you will. So
we're back.
Are we back? Okay.
Yes.
Do you want to make any announcements then, and we'll move forward?
Just we're welcome to Patriotic Art Live, and as Donald's already said about the topic is Alexander the Great as voted by the community, and what's your understanding of Alexander the Great?
Okay. So as I was just saying, my approach to the artwork is to draw the that section of the mosaic with him in the middle, and then to kind of show more modern areas of conquest, space technology, various things of this nature, to tie in the kind of the bio spirit or the racial soul of our people as being one of exploration and conquest, and greatness in that regard. I'm not like a war hawk kind of person, so that's not my angle, but rather to look at it in terms of reinterpret it or reframe it as how are we making conquest into other areas, quantum physics, medicine, just all sorts of things. There's even areas of the globe that are still unexplored. So it's more of a celebration of our greatness as a people. That's really what I'm trying to do, is to express, or what I will try to do in this piece, is to express the racial soul, the bio spirit of our people, in this particular light. So that's my
Awesome.
approach to this. I believe we will be talking about some of historic facts today, so that's a little bit of a history lesson. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So it'd be nice to not just do art, but also just talk in general about the this iconic hero. If ever we do topics like this in the future,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be good to just give some insights into the past and how important they were to our history as a people.
Yeah.
Because everything has a knock-on effect throughout history, and what Alexander the Great actually did was,
For sure. Yes.
you know, was kind of shaped the course of European destiny in many ways
Mm-hmm.
through the culture that kind of it spawned and spread out, and essentially it helped Europeans to thrive as we expanded and I guess
Mm-hmm.
colonized really. Um,
Right.
you know,
Right.
so I'm just gonna switch screens so I can get to mine, and I believe
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna since you've changed your
Well,
setup slightly,
yeah.
I need to adjust the transform.
So while
So
you're doing that, I'm going to sort of drop a few facts about
okay, go for it.
Alexander the Great here. So, how did Alexander the Great affect the destiny of Europe? This is like you were just saying. This is an important topic. The spread of Hellenism. Okay, so he was the king of he's from Macedonia, but at the time that was part of Greece, and so this is a Hellenistic cultural spread, if you will. And as we know, of course, the Greek ideas are the foundation and the core of a lot of Western civilization, Greco-Roman development through the Roman Empire, etc. So this is an interesting point. Alexander's conquest spread Greek culture, language, and ideas, shaping the Hellenistic age. The foundation of cities. He founded, or rather, he established cities like Alexandria, influenced trade and learning and culture. So it's very interesting because I know more about Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire and
Mm-hmm.
the Mongol invasions and how that shaped Asia only because of my huge background in Asian studies and living in Asia for 5 years, etc.
Yeah,
So I would say that Alexander the Great is the Genghis Khan of our world of Europe.
yeah,
And,
I would agree with that.
I think that's a really a fair statement. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it's the Hellenistic culture which he helped to spread that
Mm-hmm.
that basically uh, kind of influenced a lot. It even influenced the Romans,
No, of
um,
course, yeah.
through the Hellenization
Mm-hmm.
of different cultures, and we populated far even up to India. So
Right, right, right. Which a lot of people are really not aware that, Persia and northern India, etc. These in ancient Mesopotamia, in ancient times, these were Caucasian regions.
mm-hmm.
They're different ethnicities, but overall Caucasian. And so when we think of even ancient China has Scythian mummies and the like. So it's you often have to think, and of course I think most of us know about Egypt, and you see these mummies that have red hair and like a Caucasian bone structure, etc. It's
Mm.
a part of our history that I feel is intentionally kind of white, or not whitewashed, but right, sort of erased in a sense. We have to see things in a certain context, so that's something to point out, I would say, as well. you know
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
here's some interesting news about Greece. This is just a very recent thing I saw on Twitter, that the government has somehow officially recognized the resurgence of indigenous Greek religion, and that there's processes of people kind of reviving their indigenous ways, if you will.
mm-hmm.
I never really like to use the word religion when I talk about things of that nature, and I don't have like a blanket statement about it all, as if like, all indigenous ways are the same, with different sort of folk gods, ancestor worship, or various aspects. There's probably quite a lot of difference there. But I just thought, in light of the times we're living in, and how Western civilization is so profoundly under attack, that is a movement forward towards preserving their own culture. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I know you're. I mean, it's a tricky one for me. That I know a lot of pagans would be happy.
Right.
I mean, personally, I still feel that that's a bit of a regression to us. From a faith side of things. In terms of it's a progression towards a sense of identity and wanting to belong. But I think it's a regression in the sense of faith, obviously.
I see your point. Yeah, we've covered this ground, and I think it's probably going to be something that comes up again and again on this show, just because it's so central. Like the religion, mythology, indigenous ways, they're so intimately entwined with the arts. You know what I'm saying? I just realized that I have to share your screen. I since I rebooted, I didn't do that. So let me jump on here. I'm glad I noticed it now. Actually, no, you'll have to reshare your screen. I only have your icon now.
Okay.
I have I don't know what it's called. It's like a guest area on StreamYard. And then once you share your screen into my guest area, then I can put it on my screen. Okay. So talk a little. Oh, there she is. Okay.
So yeah, let's just read off some facts about Alexander the Great. A few little pieces of information about his life. Okay, so on the theme, how did Alexander the Great affect the destiny of Europe? So actually, we'll start off with 10 facts about Alexander the Great.
I just went over, I think, 2 of them. So
okay, which ones did you start with?
The first 2, spread of Hellenism and foundation of cities.
So, number 3, he was the king of Macedonia. Alexander became a king of Macedonia in 336 BC after the assassination of his father, Philip II. He was only about 20 years old at the time of his assassination, or his ascension to the throne. And then we have the conquests and empire. Alexander embarks on an unprecedented military campaign through Asia Minor, Egypt, and the Persian Empire. By the time of his death, his empire stretched from Greece to northwest India, including Egypt and many parts of the Middle East. So yeah, we touched on that at the beginning, didn't we? Simply epic, like you say. He was the Genghis Khan of that era, and what that did was set up the destiny for Europeans, modern Europeans. I think everything has a knock-on effect, and I think
certainly.
It all played a part in culture expansion and colonization. And had that not have happened, you could have had a number of different peoples emerge, especially from Arabia, and
that's a good point.
And populate Europe before. Well, I think Europe was somewhat sparsely populated, but I think over time it was a lot of the sort of Mediterranean cultures and the Scythians, which branched out from the more eastern regions into the west, didn't they?
Well, that's a whole other topic, and it goes back quite far as well. The Scythians, wow, I mean, that's a pretty deep topic.
Yeah.
as far as like how old they are and how far they reached all across, of course, the steppes, Russia. I some like from China to, geez, I don't know, somewhere in Eastern Europe for sure. So there's a comment here by Carlo, my buddy Carlo in Spain, is joined us. Not familiar with Greece, but it sounds like an attempt to weaken the Greek nation, which is a Christian nation. Our enemies promote everything that weakens our nations, including so-called paganism. So this is, like I said, this is going to be an ongoing discussion, I suppose, between these two sides. Paul and I are very, very much about unity and not infighting and these kinds of things. I don't know that there'll ever be an agreement on these topics. So I feel like, people are free to talk about them, of course, but at the same time, within the context of what we're doing, we're trying to bring our folks together, and celebrate who we are, and that includes all aspects of that spectrum, So, I think from there you go. That we've already had some pretty interesting conversations about Christian faith, Christian. Just sort of the spiritual technology of it, forgiveness, faith, all these interesting things. And it's very enriching to the viewer, I think, or the guests of the show, etc., everybody in the community. But I think it's also okay to give equal time to other people. I think that Carlo makes an important point that we have to be vigilant against anything that is weakening us. It maybe begs a broader question of, do we all have to be unified in one religion? Is that, or are we able to, kind of move forward with these different religious orientations, and somehow, it'll be better for us? I can't say that I have the answer for that. Go ahead.
Well, my personal view is that I think the more closely aligned we are in all cultural aspects, I think the better. And I'd never thought about this before, but I think that there shouldn't be a separation of church and state law, to be honest.
Okay.
And I think it was when that happened that there was a massive decline in our religious kind of sects and identity, because at one point we were shrouded in our identity as Christians, and I know there's a lot of pagans that at one point, Europe was very pagan, and there was a switch over, and I think there were certain means of incorporating elements of paganism into or incorporating elements of Christianity into paganism, so people will be more willing to accept it. So there was a bit of a crossover, and that because I think I heard that paganism, there's a lot more pluralism in paganism, as in they could accept multiple gods and things like that. So it wasn't monotheistic yet. And I think with that they were they didn't ditch all of their gods straight away. But they were kind of open to accepting Christ as a god, as an idol figure, and then it was a kind of a slower process of eventually getting rid of them all and becoming strictly more monotheistic. But I personally see that that Europe thrived a lot more and was more united as nations, distinct nations. I think we achieved a lot more than we did before under Christianity, and I think that's really because we all were under one hood. I mean, I know there was corruption in the Catholic Church and that, but
Yeah.
generally speaking, there was still unity within,
Yeah.
kind of under the surface of that corruption, at the grassroots of society.
Right.
And I think all that cohesion and workforce added to sort of a powerful shift of
Mm-hmm.
you know, that really enabled us to do things like build such epic cathedrals and focus on such great achievements. And
I should say that religion is an extraordinarily powerful force to bring people together and make them accomplish amazing things. I think that's pretty obvious. So Violence is Life is one of my guys in the chat here. He says, yes, people's natural carrying on of family traditions in the paganism that remained when people were made to be Christian or Muslim. So I guess he's kind of commenting on a variety of things here. There's a lot. I mean, I suppose that's a massive what's the word I'm looking for? Like sidebar or whatever, like. But let's get back a little bit to Alexander the Great. Let me read off a couple points.
Sure.
So we're talking about the foundation of cities, influence on the Roman Empire, impacted Roman art, architecture, and philosophy, military tactics and innovation. Alexander's strategies influenced European military thought for centuries. That's phenomenal. I'm wondering how much, say, Napoleon was influenced by Alexander the Great. I would imagine there's probably a connection there.
I'm sure they all would have studied them. And what he would do is he would establish what would be called Alexandrias, so mini cities that were kind of strongholds, which kind of fermented sort of Macedonian Hellenic culture.
Okay.
And he would have put people in key positions of power. And also he really ingratiated the nations that he conquered as well. So
tell me more about that.
So I think he basically didn't treat them as slaves when they were there. They were more or less seen as part of the culture. I mean, I don't think he was about kind of just exterminating people. He understood how societies work and function, and he wanted to bring with him sort of wealth and prosperity, and I think so long as people saw that they could have a good living under his rule, that they were more willing to kind of be subservient and assimilate essentially to the new opposed kind of prospecting culture which was emerging out of his...
So here's an interesting tie-in, and that's very similar to what Genghis Khan did as well. He allowed a huge amount of pluralism, religious practice, of freedom per se, of among his all the people that he conquered. And essentially it was basically just saying, I want to be the absolute ruler. There'll be some kind of a tax, but other than that, you will enjoy the protection and the benefits of our culture, or our blah 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 military da da. And what happened is that when all of these tiny states were unified under that, that's when the ideas and the sciences and the medicines and the philosophies of those peoples started mingling with each other, and then formed even greater civilizations. So, as sort of, harsh as it is talking about war and conquest of these types of things, it, in a sense, is civilization building, though. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's something there. Now, what you were just talking about, I feel very much we need to do that now. We need to have our own kind of Alexandria. We need to have, we need to build cities. We need to build new cities that incorporate everything about us, everything to secure us. We have to rebuild ourselves for the future in such a way that shows you know, acknowledgement of the history that we're living in now, which is, you know, white replacement, white genocide. And so, you know, this is the thing about life, is bad things happen, and you're supposed to grow and strengthen as a result of it. So it needs to take place on a civilizational level. You know, we are literally in a civilizational war with Judaism and Islam, you know. So these are ideas that I
cultural
resonate
wars, aren't
with.
they?
Yeah, I resonate very strongly with
And
this. Yeah.
I've heard interviews in the past where a lot of Jews would claim that Islam is their broom, and I think the nature of Jews over the years, that they've always been merchants, traders, and very dominant in commerce, and so they've always lent, and I think they've always had influence and sway in different nations, and Islam has adopted different cultural tendencies, whereas they will tend to probably live under that influence of Judaism, but they would breed in numbers, you know, and really dominate in that way in a totally different respect. So you've kind of got the, you know, where you've got an influencer that would utilize the Islamic culture in one way, but at the same time, as it might have a certain amount of control over that culture, it could very easily lose control over that culture through lack of numbers, and slowly being ground down.
Which is why you send the Christians to go fight them.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, that's kind of what's happening in currently. You know, like America has to fight all of Israel's wars, and you know, our young men have to die for Israel, and all of this whole, you know. So that's a whole other topic.
Well, I guess there's the whole Ukraine thing as well, isn't there? You know?
There you are. Yeah. I've heard them talk about Ukraine as the new Israel, or Israel 2.0 or something. Essentially trying to set it up as such. But let me read a few more comments here, or rather points. So, political influence. His empires model influenced later European empires and colonialism. So these are just some kind of factoids about Alexander the Great. Pathway to Eastern influence. Conquest facilitated the exchange of ideas, technology, and goods between the East and West. So that's a big one, I think. I feel like that's a pretty huge topic. Again, with my background in Eastern studies and such, I feel like I have I would say, you know, it's just a totally different kind of orientation towards science and invention. You know, this isn't the show about, you know, India and China. You know, that's not the topic of the show. But you know, there are, and you know, to some extent, I think that we can steal a little thunder, at least from India, in terms of the fact that the Aryans were the early founding members. But China is quite unique and quite inventive in their own way. And whenever I say China, I'm not talking about the Communist Party. I'm talking about 5,000 years of, you know, many different ethnic groups. Because China today is, imagine if the Roman Empire still existed today, you know, where all of the nations in Europe had one language and they all spoke Latin, but you know, and we're under, say, the rule of the Roman government or something. Whereas, you know, so because that's what China's history is just nonstop civil war, and you know, but again, I don't want to like go so far down that road. But anyway,
as it is today, China have kind of erased a lot of their own history, haven't they? And I mean, that's part of the communism.
Well, the communists have tried, and I would say it's more than that. They've erased their own people, meaning, like, if you compare, say, Taiwanese people to people from mainland China, the Taiwanese are more authentically Chinese
Really?
than mainland Chinese are, because communism destroys the soul of a person. It destroys their culture, destroys their history. It
And
changes who
even
they
the
think they
genetic
are.
makeup then of the people.
Well, I don't know that I would go so far as the genes. Getting DNA is actually very malleable. But what I'm talking about is that when you criminalize your own history, when you destroy all your temples and publicly assassinate college professors and all of this kind of thing, I mean, it's cultural suicide. So it's a pretty brutal thing to do, and like mainland, and I'm making broad statements here, but there is, I don't know what to say. People who live under communism, they live in fear. That's all I got to say about that. So it's not the true Chinese culture, is what I'm saying. But a warning for us to make sure that we do not have communism in the West. Yeah.
Well, we see the dangers, that's for sure.
No doubt. But so one of the sidebars related to this, I have a rocket ship, shooting off to another planet here. It's about like the conquest of space.
See, I'm going for a more just standard portrait, I think, of Alexander the Great. I just fancy sharpening up my drawing skills.
Okay.
Drawing and painting skills. So I'm just flashing out the base. I'm going to zoom in shortly and try and just do a bit more, get into some more details. So I've done the base layer. I'm going to go over it with more of a browny beige red, and then and then push it. Just a shout out to Repair Shop. Thanks for showing up again, and Mayfair Computer. How you doing? Always good to have you here. Let's drop a few more facts. So
all right.
we've spoken about some of the Alexandrian facts, spread of Hellenism, foundation of cities, influence on the Roman Empire, military tactics, innovation, political influence, the pathway for Eastern influence, philosophical and scientific impact. And what else have we need to read off? There was the founder of cities. Alexander was founded more than 20 cities that bore his name, the most famous of which is Alexandria in Egypt. Alexandria became a major center of the Hellenistic civilization, blending Greek, Egyptian, and all other cultural influences. I wonder if that was when Cleopatra started to kind of take rule, and the Macedonians kind of became a lot more prominent at that point. Not too sure.
It's a good question. So what other things? Early life. Alexander the Great was born on July 20th, 356 BC, in Pella, the ancient capital of Macedonia. He was the son of King Philip II of Macedon and Queen Olympias of Epirus. Aristotle as tutor. Wow, Aristotle was that's interesting. So one of the most influential philosophers of all time, Aristotle, was Alexander's tutor. Under Aristotle's guidance, Alexander developed a passion for philosophy, science, medicine, and literature. That I did not know. That's actually pretty extraordinary. That right there is pretty extraordinary.
So he was more than a military leader then. He wasn't pure barbarism. It was it was strategic genius that he employed. He understood people. He understood how to manage them, how to inspire.
Right.
And I think all of it wrapped up, he was a military genius as well, obviously, but I think he really he had it all really in terms of what was necessary to kind of lead, and I think that's what made him great.
Yeah, I wonder how much Aristotle's ideas inspired his conquest and
mm,
the idea of building civilization. I think that's a pretty interesting question there.
mm.
But yeah, there you go.
Yes, I used to do a podcast with Sven Longshanks a while back.
Is
Called
that right?
Patriotic History. Yeah, and yeah, we did. We touched on um, a lot of this stuff. It's hard to remember sometimes, but I do know that he, sort of towards the end of his life, he got very kind of closely linked with the Babylonians there, and I know he liked his sort of fashion and attire, and I think he kind of softened a bit. He probably mellowed over the years. There was a point in time where he pushed his soldiers so hard east that they all wanted to go home, and he gave one of the most epic speeches. If you go on Kings and Generals, it's a YouTube station. Kings and Generals is a fantastic history sort of YouTube channel, and there's a speech that they recall that he gave, and it's a very good performance, very inspiring.
What was the gist of the speech?
It was the gist of his men were abandoning him, and he basically just put them right, put them straight. Basically, he took them from peasantry farmers that barely had any cattle to warriors with all the spoils of war, and how he's himself has not really had a rest. He says it's not like he was a leader that would kind of with a hands-off approach. He was pretty much there in the front of it. He was talking about his scars that he incurred, with them, and that he hasn't really lived to like a luxurious lifestyle. He's got the cape and the diadem, and that's about it. And he was just making a point that where he's taken them, where they've come from, but ultimately they were free to go. Of course, some of them did, some of them carried on, but I think that was towards the end, and he didn't really carry on much towards it. But they could have done. They could have really headed further to the further east, and I think he wanted to conquer more parts of India, and even into where's just beyond that.
Well, past India, you're gonna go. You're starting to. It depends on where you're talking about. You've got Afghanistan and Pakistan in the north. You're basically heading into the Himalayan mountains, though, and that might have been the reason why, because the Himalayas are like the largest mountains in the world, and so trying to take an army over the Himalayan mountains, who knows? Maybe that was the reason, but
could have been.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think in the end, there's no hardcore stance on his death, but I know that he kind of spent a lot of time in Babylonia towards the end of his life.
Okay.
And I believe he probably got friendly with some people that didn't have his best interests. I know Babylon is, you understand a lot of the Babylonian religions and stuff, sex cults, and I think it's enough to, when you degenerate the mind and body, it's
sure.
I think that was, he let his guard down, and then after years of war, probably
Would you know how old he was when he died?
I don't. I'm sure those facts that we gathered would,
Mm.
but he was only young. Um,
Hmm.
he may not have been out of his 30s. Don't know if
Yeah,
anyone.
I mean, it doesn't seem like people lived very long back then, too. Like I don't know what the life expectancy was in those days, right? Probably if you were 40, you were old.
Yeah.
I would say.
Well, I'm definitely middle-aged now, even by today's standards. So,
Yeah.
you know,
And how many countries have you conquered?
I've
It's
been.
actually a funny meme. There's a meme out there about like how like Alexander the Great conquered Eurasia by the time he was X. What have you done? Like stuff like
Yeah.
that. And just comparing how different things are. But so
Yes. How's yours going? I see. I've seen that image that you're copying from.
yeah, that this one right here. Like if anybody just Googles Alexander the Great, that's pretty much the first thing that'll pop up. It's pretty common. Let me run over a couple more facts here. Let's see. Battle of Issus. In 333 BC, Alexander achieved a significant victory against the Persian king Darius III at the Battle of Issus. Issus. That's how that's spelled. Despite being outnumbered, Alexander's tactical genius led to a decisive victory. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Seven phalanx, phalanx and companion cavalry. Alexander made innovative use of the Macedonian phalanx,
Wow.
a military formation, and his companion cavalry, an elite cavalry unit, which played crucial roles in his battlefield success. That would be interesting to get into that more deeply and find out, what that was exactly, how that worked, etc. I happen to know about how like the Mongols worked, what their strategies were.
Yeah.
They were master horsemen, and they could one thing that they basically developed was the ability to shoot backwards while they're running away on a horse. And another part of their so-called military technology is the invention of silk garments. And so the deal with silk is that if an arrow shot into you, somehow the silk would go into you as well. And so when you wanted to pull an arrow out, you would pull the silk open, and it would help to push the arrow out and cause much less damage. So you had soldiers that could heal quickly and come back into battle. So that was like a gigantic for its time. That was like a big technology. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's a typical trait of the Scythians, isn't it? The horseback riding and riding backwards and being archers and masters of the bow.
For sure. So what they would do is they would send in a small group of riders into a military encampment, and then just start, shooting arrows and fighting them. And that military encampment would send all of their guys out to chase the Mongols, who are, master horsemen, and they're, speeding out of there, and they're shooting backwards. But what it was basically a ruse to bring them into a much larger military setup, which is sort of more like a U shape, So the opposing army would come into the U shape, chasing the smaller band, and then the Mongols would just surround them, and that was it,
Right.
So they used that strategy over and over and over and over.
Until someone eventually cracked on me, but yeah, why?
Yeah.
It's working. Yeah, I mean, what would happen if Alexander didn't conquer as much territory as he did and expand the sort of Hellenic influence.
Right.
Um,
That's an important question. You know,
the
I think we, of course,
there's a lot of I think there's arguments that say Alexander the Great was actually sort of prophesied in the Bible.
no kidding.
Yeah, as
Oh.
because the Persian empires, Babylonian empires were a very prominent, featured very prominently in the Bible, especially the Old Testament, and
Okay.
you know, they were responsible for killing off the original Israelites, not killing them off, but sending them into sort of captivity, and it's, you know, some argue that you know, Alexander the Great was the hand of God's kind of punishment of promised fate to those Babylonian empires. You know, they had it coming to them.
Had it coming to them. Well, that's a very compassionate God.
Yeah,
I'm
it sounds like
looking
that.
up. Yeah.
But it's that. I mean, if there's an element of justice, right, then everyone everyone needs to be humbled, and I think when I say had it coming to them, this is the doing of themselves. You know, it's like it's like in the West here now. We had it coming to us, and it's both the judgment of God on us as a people, but also it's the work of our own. You know, it's the work of our own actions, the fruit of our actions, the seeds that we've sown. We've allowed other peoples to get in positions of power within our lands. We've abandoned our morals and ethics and our faith, and this is what happens. So, you know, and it's hard to say, oh, you know, it's how do you contrast free will with predestination, and you know, it's really hard to get your head around, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you know, I think it's both simultaneously a judgment on us, but it is it's a necessary thing that we're going through in order to preserve us, I think.
This is a really profound topic that you're talking about, and I have like a variety of reactions to it. You know, I mean, I could we could go deep on this topic. So I guess a part of it is I can't disagree with you to a certain extent that somehow we let this happen to us somehow, but simultaneously I feel like, you know, we were tricked, we were fooled.
Oh yeah, we were as well.
And
Yeah,
over
I
a
agree.
very, 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 very long period of time, we were infiltrated. This is on and on. We could, you know,
No, I
I don't,
agree. I agree with that as well. But it's the accuser, isn't it? It's the classic case of the accuser in scripture. Satan is essentially adversary. The adversary is that person that you know, gives us the apple, that dangles the carrot and floods the swamp. And like Quatriani says, if you've ever listened to some of his stuff, you know, the people deserve the swamp that they allowed to kind of take root, and you know, and the swamp has been flooded, and we let it. It was on our watch, and yes, we were tricked and kind of coerced and enticed, you know, and with technology, like you said before, has been used against us to pump out a lot of this sort of programming and trickery, But ultimately, we took our eyes off of God. So that's what happens when you take your eyes off God. Is even in our own personal lives. As a nation, we've done it, and this is where how far we've fallen. And if you do it in your marriage, for example, you take your eyes off God, you start looking at certain materials and that. And there's a scripture which talks about in the Bible, which is quite profound, and it's desire gives birth to sin, and then sin gives birth to death. So, and it starts with the thought. So, if you harbour certain thoughts, that will perpetuate the desire, and that desire grows, and then eventually it acts out and it manifests, and that then the thing that is fruitful in your life that it might have direct effect on, such as relationships, will begin to die. And so, if we are a dying kind of culture and nation, it is because of our own actions. I think we have to take responsibility for it.
I definitely hear your point. I definitely hear your point, and I don't disagree that lack of moral standards and connection to God is absolutely the downfall. I guess my feeling is what resonates with me, at least in what you're saying, is this concept of how this has to happen in order for us to grow. And you would, it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow. I don't know that it quote has to happen. Well, let me finish my point. Let me just finish my point. So what I'm trying to say is that in nature, hardship makes you stronger, and it's just a thing, And so there's if we can take the point of view that this is a struggle that in a sense is an opportunity for glory, and that we can become glorious through the struggle, that is very, very Western. That's very white, and I would say this could be a really good approach to looking at it, because we're very, very demoralized. There's a lot of infighting. I feel strongly that we've got to get past that type of black pill mentality, and think more in terms of this is actually I don't know, take a berserker approach to it, that kind of bloodthirst for the battlefield of saving our people and saving our civilization, and the glory that comes from it. And that's a very, very based, approach to this, rather than the woe is me, we've been fooled, we've been tricked, and we lost our connection with God. And those are obviously issues to consider. But I feel like we should remoralize ourselves. We should listen to this. We should learn from it, and don't make these mistakes again. Don't make these mistakes again. And part of doing that is, essentially the things that we're talking about, looking at what did Alexander the Great do? He's setting up civilizations as he did, et cetera, et cetera. So there's something to learn from the theme of that.
No, I definitely agree. But what I'm saying is, when I say these things have to happen, it's almost like a dynamic that, what comes up must come down. And, just as there's seasons in the cycle of, winter, or spring, autumn, it's these cycles of there's cycles of falling from grace, and then reclaiming that, and it's kind of like a sifting process. So we're kind of being refined, and we go through these over. I think we've been going through this process for a number of different times and throughout history, with different pockets of different cultures of our people.
It's never been so intense as it is now, though, I would say.
No. Well, we are. I mean, we're on the cusp of. It's like I would say it's like a fall of Rome, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh,
so
God, yeah.
We've not had many of these epic falls of civilization that and especially now where with the height of technology that's we're probably in, the level of sheer control, I think we are definitely in a battle which is probably harder.
Yeah.
We've probably never been so demoralized throughout our history as a people, simply because of the level of control that
it's very hard to compare what we're going through to what people in Rome went through. I think that it was quite horrible, the fall of Rome, but ours was extraordinarily horrible, and maybe it's unprecedented in history if you consider the mass killings just from the vaccine alone.
True.
And then pardon me, the whole demoralization of the LGBT agenda, the darkness of the state taking over people's children, and it's just darker and darker than I think anything humanity has known, because of all the technology that we have. But also our enemies have had a very long time to work on this, to develop their strategies, etc. I feel, I mean, I'm not the black pill guy, but it's gonna take everything we got to get out of this. It's gonna take everything we got, and I do feel that there are changes happening. I feel hopeful. It's weird because it's like we're in a time where everything's getting better and worse simultaneously. There's these two. It's insane.
It comes in waveforms, doesn't it? But,
You're right.
I think the next generation of youth is going to be a lot harsher.
Oh God, hugely.
We are now. I think
I can already
right now we are by comparison so soft. I mean, we've not even tasted war in our lifetime like some other peoples have. Obviously, some of the Eastern Europeans had a harsher life than us in the West growing up. But our generation now in the West are very soft, I think.
Yeah, I dread to think of what could happen and what I believe is coming, but there's that might change. There might be some something on the grand scale of a world war that has never could never have been conceived.
Have you ever read up about Albert Pike?
Albert Pike, the head of the Freemasons.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah. So I mean, his outline for 3 world wars, and I'm not sure how true it is, but it definitely seems like World War III is shaping up as he projected.
I mean, the things that's at this point, it's so obvious that they're all in control of it all, that they literally make it happen. It's like, I mean, they're fucking telling us on the mainstream news to prepare for war. It's fucked up. And everybody knows it's fake. Everybody's like, bullshit. There was just, you are making the fucking war, not us. We don't want war. It's all horseshit,
Yeah.
So
I mean, we live in the age of information, don't we? So in some ways, it's like we know that there's so many lies, but we're still powerless to do much about it. And we're not powerless, obviously. We are subdued mentally, and I think it's gonna take some more doing to kind of get together and actually try and make change.
I agree. So there's this is like a spectrum. So you have people who have been planning and preparing for this for many years, and then you have kind of people that are super outraged. Like right now at the Texas border, there are convoys of people coming down that people are talking about a shooting war. They're literally,
Really?
I mean, it's
Wow.
Texas style. Get the guns. We're going for it. Like it's on. Like
Wow.
they're ready to fucking die now. Like they're ready to do it, and it's there. So this exists, and then you kind of have maybe a slightly softer version of that where you just sort of have like the information warriors, who are trying to work on getting the message out and blah blah blah. People who are involved in politics that are trying to like use that angle of the fight. And so there's just so many dimensions. And then of course the people that are the majority, well, I don't know if there's a majority of people, but it seems like the majority of people are just in denial, or they are literally ignorant and are just kind of like stuck in the matrix of like watching sports ball and working
Yeah.
9 to 5
Well,
and
that's what I was gonna say. It's the dependency on creature comforts, isn't it? It's like the dog still wants to just chew down on that bone. It doesn't mind doing its sort of 9 to 5, so long as it can go home and have its few
yeah.
little toys and moments. And
Right. One of the most disturbing things about the Republicans and conservatives in America is I just saw an interview with Jared Taylor talking about this, how he went to a Trump rally some time ago, and he interviewed people like, what is it about Trump that you like, blah, blah, blah. And he brought up race. He's Jared Taylor. And the thing that they cared about the most was essentially the economy. And I'm like,
really,
what? I mean, I get it in terms of like, we want to not have to pay so much taxes and we want prices to go down. And like, that's fine. But just the fact that they've gotten to that point where that matters more than race means the enemy has won, in my view. You see what I'm saying? And it's not until we have 10 million violent immigrants, or rather illegals, forced into our country, and how they're just like fucking everything up badly, then people are gonna go, oh yeah, race first. Oh, okay, now I get it. And like the whole I'll give you an example. This guy named Ted Nugent is a rock star in America. You probably know who he is. And during the Trump time, he kind of came out as like a big gun spokesman, and just, that same old kind of Texas flair, that whole thing, and big Trump supporter. And Republicans, conservatives, Trumpers, they were super happy about, here's this big rock star guy who's making all these funny comments, and like this became a bit of a hero, like an icon of that movement. Well, just a day or two ago, I saw news clippings saying, oh, Ted Nugent is in trouble again for saying that the Jews control the banking. And I'm like, what? I mean, if he is saying that makes it okay for everyone else to say it. Do you get my point?
is he
So,
that well respected then, or is that
well, I mean, I don't expect you to know like
who is he?
American rock and roll history or whatever, but back in like the 70s, like he was a super badass rock star,
Right.
and just a wild, really, really wild rock star guy.
Okay.
And then throughout time or whatever, he sort of just became very much affiliated with like the gun issues. Big avid hunter. He has like his property in Texas is like a sanctuary for buffalo, to preserve the buffaloes. All this stuff. It's very Americana, but for like a guy like that to say that about the Jews, it just shows how the Overton window's moving. So that's my point.
Yeah, I think. I mean, there's definitely a rise of these talking points, and are looking for solutions, looking for asking why these things have happened, and a lot of people draw the same conclusions. So,
Wow.
what do you
I
do?
just my buddy, my channel was making a couple comments in the chat. He was talking about Americans did not want to go to World War I or II, but they didn't have the media to understand what's going on. Now we do. We will not fight these wars. So all they have is like, you know, LGBT people going, you know, and you know, so that's, they're just gonna go right into the meat grinder, you know. And then he just mentioned, did you see that Toby Keith died of terrible cancer? So Toby Keith's a huge country music star. I'm not into country music, but like for him to have just died from that, and that it's like vaccine related. That's the kind of thing about this is like, you know, people have been dying like crazy, and we know it's the vaccine. And everyone who was like saying that they should put us in camps because we're not vaccinated, you know, or lose our jobs, have our children taken away because we're not vaccinated. Those people are they're awfully quiet now. You know, like, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm sure they can see, but they can't admit it, because as part of being a liberal is just being arrogant, you know?
Well, I think what it is people, when they buy into the lie, and they were duped, they for one don't want to buy, they don't want to acknowledge that they were duped.
Yeah, that's a big.
And when you're part of the lie, you tend to want to perpetuate it as well. So
yeah,
you know,
to enforce
I
it.
Yeah. It's glad to say that I didn't take any jabs. That's for sure.
Yeah, I did my research. I mean, literally anything the government tells you to do, you better
remember.
You better research it. Yeah.
I remember I was kind of fooled for maybe a couple of weeks at that.
Yeah.
And it was when it was before I even came over, and I was watching videos of China and people kind of dropping in the streets, and
yeah, it was awful. It was a terrible
like,
situation.
Wow, that if that comes over
horrible.
here, you know.
Yeah.
And these highlights aren't working at all.
Yeah, it was so dystopian over there. It was horrible. People were being like they were soldering metal bars around their doors to lock them into their apartments to stop them from spreading COVID, and you know.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of it didn't even seem real. Like, it didn't take long before I was thinking, well, where's you know, all of what was said taking place? I'm not seeing any of this happening in the streets, or you know, I'm not seeing people dropping dead. I'm not seeing people just keel over. And it's the case that, you know, if there was no media, you wouldn't think anything of it. So I think when you're just able to kind of rationalize it for yourself.
Yeah. It points out the power of the media in all of this, like how absolutely essential it is that people watch the media, buy into the media, etc. Like all of it. And I mean, I just had this discussion last night with some friends, like, why don't our overlords just simply say, look, you know, no more drama, no more theater. We rule the world, and you know, you got to do these things, or otherwise we'll just like kill you or imprison you or do some shit. You know, like, why is it not just an open dictatorship?
Well, I don't think they have full control yet. I think they strive for it through tech and everything like that, but I don't think they have it yet. No, in some ways they're trying to act fast now because they know, you know, that things are changing. People are talking. People are waking up, and when that happens, you know, you have to act fast, don't you?
So the thing with the jab is that it requires compliance. You're supposed to comply with it, and there's people who, you know, comment on this culture, this problem, all of this stuff, and they talk about how the elite, if you want to call them that, they manufacture consent, how they if you agree to their power structures
Mm-hmm.
and you don't rebel against it, then they are beyond karma. If I say I'm going
Yeah.
to come to your house and steal your car at 2:30 today, and you don't stop me, then that's on you. You know what I mean? But they do it in such a way where they lie, where everything is a lie. And then not only that, they've socially engineered people to the point where they reinforce and they enforce the lie among each other. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's quite a crisis. Anyway, I'm really pleased with how this is shaping up. All this pencil work is just like foundational.
Yeah, it's looking good. I think you've gone for a more symbolic route.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's some really beautiful portrait coming together there. And if there's anyone in the chat who would like to comment or question or get involved in what we're talking about, that's great. I'm going to get back to a couple points
Awesome.
about Alexander the Great
Mm-hmm.
in just a second here. Hold on. So, what do we know? Cultural fusion. Alexander's conquest resulted in the spread of Greek culture and language through his empire, leading to the Hellenistic age itself, which featured a blend of Eastern and Western cultural elements. Well, now, bing, that's quite powerful. I'm ashamed to say that I need to learn more about Hellenism in general. I know, bits and pieces and parts and pieces and whatever. Like I'm not an expert in the topic, but one thing I'm particularly interested in is the bridge between Eastern and Western thought. Things like Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism is essentially half Greco-Roman and half Eastern philosophy. It's quite fascinating. It's disappeared
Didn't
in
it take
history.
root in Assyria?
I believe I associate it more with Persia.
Yeah,
It's more of
Persia. Okay, I thought the Assyrians kind of had that.
How and where and when it spread to different regions, I can't say for sure.
Okay.
There are in small groups of Zoroastrians still in India,
Right.
so they still practice it. I used to be in touch with Jason Reza Georgiani years ago. We talked a lot more, just not online or whatever. Like I didn't have him on my show or whatever, but we would have kind of correspondences about Zarathustra, Zoroastrianism. He's half Persian, half Irish.
Okay.
That's an interesting combo, and like he's like a super genius as far as like he's just off the charts brainiac guy, like super smart. And anyway, so he was interested. I had the American Zarathustra brand, and I think that kind of made his eyes widen, and like, oh, are you interested in this? And so, boom, we were off and running in these fantastic conversations. So I would suspect that the spread of Greek ideas probably had some impact on Zoroastrianism.
Actually.
Yeah. So. A few other things here. Death and legacy. Alexander died in Babylon in 323 BC. Did you read that already? At the age of 32. I think you did.
I knew that before from when I did the show.
Oh, you just...
Sven.
All right. So he was 32 years old. The cause of his death remains a subject of speculation and debate among historians, with theories including malaria, typhoid fever, alcohol poisoning, or assassination. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I know the. Well, I don't know anything. To be honest, I don't know. Right. But I suspect that he was kind of poisoned, and from what I learned of his life towards the end, he probably let his guard down, and he was he was in and around. He was just enjoying the spoils of his success, I think. And I think he let his guard down, and some people probably he probably made a lot of enemies along the way. So
Oh God, I'm quite sure of it. I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised if he was poisoned.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty common. I think that's a fair thing to assume.
Because he would have still had a lot of influence and sway while he was alive, and so you know, I think there would have been people, especially in Babylon. We know what roots were in Babylon, so I really wouldn't be surprised if you know, if he was poisoned from some Babylonian kind of
some
cultish.
Babylonian.
Yeah.
Okay. Division of empire. Let's see. After his death, Alexander's vast empire did not long survive as a unified state. It was divided among his generals, leading to the formation of several Hellenistic kingdoms, such as the Seleucid Empire, the Ptolemaic Kingdom in Egypt, and the Antigonid dynasty of Macedon. So, I mean, over such gigantic land mass, how could you unify all that? I know it's been done and whatever, but it just seems that all things that come together fall apart in time or something.
Yeah.
There has to be some sort of unifying trait that would make all of that work.
Yeah, and I think one of the points I touched on before when I went over this with Sven a couple of years ago was that when you expand so fast, although you can get down settlements and things, there's not the roots don't stay so strong. They don't grow too deep. So I think the faster you expand, the easier it is for the roots to be uprooted. That makes sense.
No doubt. That's interesting, and it seems like he really accomplished a lot in a fairly short period of time. But yeah, like I said, with the theme in my work here is I'm interested in the spirit of Alexander the Great, and how that can influence and shape our movement. What is it that we need to conquer? Yeah.
What do we need to conquer?
Yeah. I think ourselves. Ultimately, like that's my first answer is ourselves. That I think has been the hardest part of this movement is getting other whites to see what the hell's going on. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then even within the movement itself, there's so much infighting. So that's another topic.
Yeah. Did you hear about there's Homeland? There's a political party.
Okay, tell me about it.
A political party formed in the UK called Homeland, which was initially they were initially part of, a lot of the people were initially part of the PA, and they've kind of gone off and they managed to get listed as a political party. I thought it was interesting because I know Mark and the rest of the team at PA have tried so hard and kind of rejected at every turn. So I just wondered how that's going to fare moving forwards. Is it going to cause a future rift with kind of, with choices between the PA or, and I don't know, I'm just kind of a bit concerned that it might be something like that. But it shouldn't be, but
I can only kind of pontificate on that in terms of like the things that I am aware of. So, for example, in America, we have the National Justice Party.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first heard about it, I was so excited and so happy. And then I learned that they're not legally a political party. And
Okay.
I was like, what? You know, like, how can you say you are? And then that right straight away disappointed me so much that I was like, okay, well, maybe we'll just see how it goes, da da da. And then that just recently disbanded. There was all kinds of stuff.
Really?
I don't really, I can't really speak on it, and nor is it something I really want to speak on. It's a big question right now in terms of like, where will people migrate to from that? I was invited a bunch of times to go to their meetings and things. I just never made it. It just wasn't convenient for me to be able to go. But anyway, now what I've discovered is there is a legitimate legal party for white people representing white demographics called the American Freedom Party. It's amfreeparty.org. I strongly urge everyone watching this show to look it up. And they are I'll say this: the members of the board are people from American Renaissance, Jared Taylor's organization.
I like him. I think he's very articulate and
hugely. So, forgetting Kevin McDonald is on the board. He's very well known guy in our movement, etc. So it's legit, and it's based on people who are older, more mature, have been in this movement for decades, you know, and have more of an academic background rather than like a podcast shitboard background. You know what I'm saying here? So like not you know, whatever, that's its own culture and that's fun or whatever, but it's not going to appeal to, you know, John and Mary suburb, like white suburb. They're not going to jive with like the N-word and all of the other kind of stuff that they do, you know. So it's but then at the same time, like you were pointing out, the generations are turning. You know what I'm saying? Like what mom and pop or grandpa and grandma would have voted for, you know, the grandkids are not going to be voting for. You know what I'm saying? So my hope is always for unity and for cooperation among all of these factions. I think we're fools if we don't do that. That we have to set aside our egos to, you know, where we can, and work together. As you know, I'm like a massive supporter of Mark Collette and everything that Mark does. Patriotic Alternative. He's an absolute hero in my mind. You know, so I wish we had a Mark Collette. I wish we had a Mark Collette in America. I mean, we got some great guys. I would say like Warren Balow is one of my top.
I met him.
That's awesome.
He came and spoke. Nice guy. Very knowledgeable as well.
That's the thing. He's solid. Like he's mature. He presents himself well. He's intelligent. He knows how to talk. He has courage. You know, he has all of those traits that make for a good leader. Not somebody who is just like taking the piss out of somebody on a podcast all day and you know, just that sort of like locker room jive BS that is really for teenagers. Like we need to get past that. You know, it is a big part of the culture of the far right, the alt right, or whatever. But if we're gonna go mainstream, we have to get past all that stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's interesting. We always have interesting conversations on this show, you know.
Always.
Even though like the theme is Alexander the Great, it somehow spins off into some and not always easy conversations either. You know, like the whole Christian pagan thing and all that business. That can be difficult.
Yes,
Whenever that comes up, I feel like it's like I've got like two siblings that are fighting, you know. Like I love them both, you know, and I don't want
yeah,
to see them fight, and it hurts to see them fight. It really does. So that's kind of why I'm always about like, let's we're not going to agree on everything. You do your best, and you know, time will kind of tell, I guess, you know.
yeah, sure, sure.
But I always say, like, act like your people are depending on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, they are really, and
Yeah,
you know, we're trying to
exactly.
do our bit. Um,
No doubt.
we try, we try, we try.
Yeah, we're working on it.
But yeah, I think we're gaining some traction now with these shows, and it just I think it helps just doing something, um, you know,
Sure.
doing for yourself, knowing that you're trying to do something, trying to build community, you're trying
Right. I also feel that a lot of what we do, it's archived. You know what I mean? That it, even though maybe we might have a lot of people watching the show now, there's going to come a time when that's going to matter, and people are going to say, you know, what is white culture? What is white art? What is, you know, what resources do we have to draw from on this topic? And then we'll already have dozens of shows, you know,
yeah,
by
very
that
true.
time, that, you know, oh, check out this resource, check out that resource. When I was doing the Imperium Art series, that's a bunch of it's essentially a documentary where I interview artists and influencers in our sphere, and you know, we specifically talk about what would be a vision for the arts, for our movement and our people moving forward. You know, how could we, you know, what should artists that are conscious, racially conscious, be doing? You know, what should we be saying? What matters? How do we function? Because culture obviously is important, right? You know, so you get the general idea I'm pointing out
Yeah, yeah.
here. Yeah. And so there's many times where something like that would come up online at any, you know, Twitter here or there somewhere, and then I would shoot off a link to the playlist, and you know, because there's just so many people that are like so negative, and they're like, oh, right wing doesn't have any culture. Right, there's no such thing as right wing art or white people this, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, well, yeah, you know, and then I like shoot a cannonball right in their gut, you know, like, check this out, you know, boom, and knock them
Yeah.
down. So it's important that we have this material, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure the people that are tuning in now, um, I'd like to think that they get something from it as well.
Sure.
If not to just hang out, to know that they've got
Oh,
that there's people
totally,
there
hugely,
to
yeah.
understand what they're kind
Yeah.
of thinking, feeling, and
Right. Well, for me, this is like, you know, 1:30. It starts at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in the East Coast, and most people are at their jobs, you know. So I don't expect people to be able to tune in at this time. They can obviously, you know, check out the playback or what have you. But my nightly streams, not nightly, but I almost every night I'm doing art streams, live art
yeah,
streams. I get between 150 and 200 views,
wow,
and that's just me hanging out with the buds, you know, drawing comics and talking about, you know, our politics and our culture, our history, all of our stuff.
yeah,
So that, you know, there's people around at that time, you know, that can enjoy the content, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So
it's awesome.
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, so any other final bits of info that we haven't touched upon yet?
Well,
Um,
no, actually, I did cover the list there, so I'm not quite done with this piece, but it's shaping up enough to sort of be like, we probably wrap the show up. That your piece looks gorgeous. It's really nicely painted.
Cheers. There's still
Nice
bits I need
palette.
to do on it, but
Yeah.
yeah, I need to do a bit on the armor at the bottom. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very rusty with with portraits. I haven't done portraits in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I'm basically gonna continue with this another day, I think.
Okay.
For now,
Yeah, it's been we've been going about an hour and a half now. Exactly.
yeah,
Actually.
exactly an hour and a half.
Why don't we?
So yeah.
All right. Well, why don't we wrap it up? I want to thank everyone for joining us. Like, subscribe, comment, and share, as usual. Get engaged. Be a proliferator of the arts. Our content really doesn't exist in a void. It depends on you to share and get involved in the culture. So it's not all hot takes and shit lording. Give people inspiration. Connect them again to our biospirit, our racial soul. Inspire our people. We have a hard battle ahead of us, and the arts are kind of like spiritual food that we must feast on in order to fight these battles. So thank you so much, Patriot. Again, it's just always such a pleasure. I'm so happy that we're doing this together.
Yeah, I feel the same. I'm really happy to have you co-hosting this show with me, and obviously joining artists and creatives from across the pond in the US to the UK. And yeah, so thanks to anyone who's tuned in today and anyone watching on the repeat videos. Yeah, check out the White Art Collective channels on YouTube, also the Patriotic Arts community. You can visit via the website patrioticarts.community, and there you can link to the Telegram channels and see what contests we've got on at the moment. And yeah, look out for the final artworks in future videos. Do a time-lapse recap, and yeah, tune in same time next week, 6 p.m. GMT.
And 1 p.m. EST. So God bless you guys. Have a wonderful day, and don't lose the faith.